After 40 years of work without a single break, I finally planned a trip. Then my daughter-in-law said, "I'm leaving the 3 kids with you, you don't do anything anyway." That's when I knew she saw me as her servant. But this time she'll learn a lesson. The game begins now? When the phone rang, I had just folded the dress I'd picked for my first trip after 40 years of working without a vacation. My daughter-in-law's voice cut through the air, cold and sharp as a knife. "I'm leaving the 3 kids at your place. You don't do anything anyway, so watch them for me." Not a single thank you. Not a hint of warmth in her words. I looked at the suitcase already open on the chair, then quietly closed the lid on my Yellowstone dream. No anger, no resentment, just a thin smile. Enough to hide the plan that had just formed in my head. I opened the drawer, took out an old USB stick, then texted my close friend. "Need a few small things tonight. A mic. A smoke detector camera. She thinks I'm a docile old woman, easy to boss around, but this time I'll be the one teaching her a lesson she'll never forget. It's time for the person she looks down on the most, to be the one who makes her pay the highest price." If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Iris Montgomery, 67 years old, newly retired after 35 years in a classroom at an elementary school in Portland, Oregon. For nearly half a century, my life was wrapped in the school bell, chalk dust, and the eyes of children. I dreamed of a day I'd be free, waking up without an alarm, going to see Yellowstone in the summer, where the sun rises slowly and the smell of dry grass hangs in the air like a song. Today was supposed to be that day, but instead of starting the trip I dreamed about, I got a phone call that chilled me more than any wind off the Rockies. Sierra, my daughter-in-law, always had a way of making me feel small, even though I've lived twice as long as she has. From her tone, I knew she wasn't asking. She was ordering, no asking if I had plans. If I was willing. To Sierra, I was just an idle old lady. I looked at the suitcase still open. The navy travel dress tucked inside next to the plane ticket I'd bought with my own savings. A long breath. Not because I regretted the trip, but because I suddenly realized after all these years, I'd still been living inside the loop she drew. Always there to be ready, to sacrifice, to stay quiet. I picked up my phone and read the follow-up text Sierra had sent. "You handle whatever they eat, I'm busy. Bye." There was a time I would have swallowed my tears, smiled, and told myself as long as it's for family. But today, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't planning to refuse. I would say yes, but not to help. To observe. To see how this modern family Sierra is so proud of really runs, and whether my grandkids still know how to love, or if they've been taught to look down on the very person who gave birth to their father. I texted Nora Bennett, my best friend from Teachers College, who now works as a TV technician. "Swing by tonight. Need a few things. Mic, smoke detector camera." Nora called back in under a minute, her husky voice laughing. "Haven't heard you sound like that in a long time, Iris. Sounds like something big is coming." "Yeah," I said. "Definitely big. And this time, I won't stand still." I hung up and poured a cup of chamomile tea. Warm steam fogged the picture frame on the table. Caleb, my son, holding his firstborn Mason right after his first birthday. In the photo, Caleb's smile is bright, and Sierra leans on her husband's shoulder, gentle as an angel. Back then, I believed I was lucky to have a kind daughter-in-law. Looking back now, I was probably wrong, and the price of that mistake was years of being pushed to the margins of my own family. I remember last Christmas well. I made turkey with my mother's old recipe. The cranberry sauce Caleb used to love. When I brought it to the house, Sierra glanced at it and shrugged. "Oh, thanks. But we don't eat greasy roasted stuff." I ordered organic. She lifted the trash can lid, and tossed the still hot turkey right in. No one said a word. Caleb stood there, frozen and embarrassed. All I remember is smiling, excusing myself early, then driving through thick snowfall, wondering what I had done wrong. Tonight, thinking back to that moment, I don't feel pain anymore. I feel something cold and clear like a glassy lake right before a storm. I put the suitcase back in the closet, opened my laptop, and checked the Wi-Fi at home. I changed the password, and disconnected the old devices Sierra used whenever she came over. She has a habit of connecting everything to my system from the door camera to the smart speaker. As if she wanted to surveil me even when she wasn't here. This time, I wiped it all. I took out a worn leather notebook and opened to the first page. Inside, I wrote 4 lines in bold, decisive ink. Truth, justice, family, healing. Those 4 words would be the compass for everything I was about to do. I don't want revenge. I just want fairness back. And if, in the process, I can pull my son and my 3 grandkids back into the light, then it'll all be worth it. The clock read 4:45. Outside the window, Portland sunlight poured over the late-season maples. I looked at my hands, still stained with chalk, still calloused after so many years teaching. An ordinary woman. An old teacher everyone thinks is weak, but they don't know. In a classroom, I've stood against hundreds of rebellious kids, and hundreds of difficult parents. I know how to be patient. I know how to wait for the right moment. And more than anything, I know how to teach a lesson no one ever forgets. That evening, Nora came over with a small bag. Inside were a mini mic, a smoke detector-style hidden camera, and a device to back up cloud data. She sat on the sofa, looked at me, and said softly, "You sure about this, Iris? This is declaring war." "No," I said. "I'm just taking back what's mine." We tested the gear, giggling like we were freshmen again. Maybe I hadn't. I felt this alive in years. After Nora left, I made another cup of tea and sat by the window, watching dusk fade. In that moment, I felt truly still. No anger, no fear, no regret. Just one thought. Clear as the tick of the wall clock. If she wants to turn me into a free babysitter, then let's see what this babysitter can really do. I smiled, closed the notebook. The game started right then. I still remember clearly the day my world collapsed, a foggy December morning, more than 30 years ago. The phone rang, and one sentence from a police officer split my life in two. "Ma'am, your husband, Daniel Montgomery, didn't survive the crash on I-84. Caleb was 3 years old then. He was still under his blanket, clutching the teddy bear his father bought. I sat by his bed, looked at his sleeping face, and swore to the man who was gone that I would never let our son go without. From that day on, I was both father and mother. By day, I taught at Jefferson Elementary. By night, I tutored neighborhood kids at home. There were nights I got home ready to collapse, fingers raw from grading until late, but hearing my boy giggle in his sleep made me feel stronger than anyone. A teacher's salary is never generous, so I stretched every dollar. Some months, the electric bill hit the same time as the milk money, and I chose to eat toast with butter all week, so Caleb could have new school shoes. He was little. He never knew how many meals I skipped to buy the book he wanted. All I needed was to see his eyes light up when he opened it. That was enough. One Christmas when Caleb was 8, I realized I had only a few singles left in my wallet. At the table, my son was busy writing a letter to Santa, asking for a toy train. I looked at the paper shaking in my hand, then opened the old wooden box my mother left me. Inside was a silver locket engraved with an iris, her only gift to me on my wedding day. I sold it. The shop owner gave me exactly $50, just enough for a proper dinner and Caleb's gift. That night, when he squealed opening the box, I just stood there, trying to hide the fact that my hand no longer wore that familiar chain. The price of motherhood is sometimes small, empty spaces like that, but they fill your heart so much, there's no room left for regret. The years after, our life moved on, slow but steady. Caleb studied hard, was respectful, and had grit. I never had to nag him, and I never heard him complain. He was like his father, steady, quiet, with a light in his eyes that made me believe every sacrifice was worth it. When Caleb got into Oregon State University, I burst into tears in the middle of the school courtyard. 35 years as a teacher, I'd sent hundreds of students off to new journeys, but I'd never felt that proud. I kept my promise to Daniel. Our son had grown up, standing on his own feet, and then Sierra entered his life. I still remember the first time I met her, a Sunday morning, an early fall. Caleb brought Sierra over to meet me. She wore a cream dress, soft brown hair, smiling eyes, and a voice sweet as honey. "Miss Montgomery, I've heard so much from Caleb. You're amazing. Raising him on your own like this, I admire you so much." That sentence melted my heart on the spot. 20 years as a single mother. No one had ever said those words to me. At dinner, Sierra kept serving me food, asking questions, and I, naive as a child, believed my son had found a good wife. I even dipped into my retirement savings to cover half the wedding because I thought, my son deserves a complete start. The wedding was in a small garden outside Salem. String lights wrapped around branches, like stars fall into earth. Caleb was happy. Sierra was beautiful as a painting, holding her husband's arm, calling me Mom in that sweet voice. I cried when I heard it. I never imagined that a few years later, that Mom would become a cold knife straight to my heart. After the wedding, Sierra moved into the house my son bought with his first mortgage. At first, she was friendly, checking in, sending me family dinner photos. But slowly, those messages thinned, then stopped. I began to see my name left off family gatherings, then off the guest list for my grandkids' birthdays. The first time I was excluded was Mason's birthday, my first grandchild. I had made our family apple pie Caleb's childhood favorite. I drove an hour and a half, and Sierra stood at the door, her smile as cold as frost. "Oh, you came? Too bad, I thought Caleb told you. Today's just a small party for Mason's classmates. Not really suitable." Then she closed the door, gently, politely, as if I were a delivery person at the wrong address. On the drive back, I turned the radio up to drown out my heartbeat. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone. After that, the reasons changed. But the result was the same. The kids are busy with school. The house is small, hope you understand. I was going to visit, but work is crazy this week. I learned to wait, to smile, to get used to the silence in a house that felt bigger by the day. But what hurt most wasn't being forgotten. It was watching Caleb burn out. My son worked 14 hours a day at a steel plant. Eyes always tired. Shoulders always heavy. I asked, "You doing okay, Caleb?" He just smiled. "I'm fine, Mom. Sierra just needs more time to get her business stable." I wanted to believe, but a mother's gut wouldn't let me. Sierra always talked about new projects, conferences, business trips, and my son's bank account kept shrinking. I'd heard a few neighbors whisper that Sierra was in some multi-level sales groups. I didn't want to believe it until the day she called me a poor old lady. It was Thanksgiving. I brought a basket of red apples from my yard. When I stepped into the kitchen, Sierra was on the phone, not bothering to lower her voice. "His mom's coming?" Ugh, another poor old lady with tacky home-cooked food. I swear, people like that ruined the vibe. She didn't know I was standing right behind her. When she turned around, the smile on her lips froze, but I only said one thing. "Don't worry, I won't ruin your dinner." Then, I set the apples down, and quietly left. From that moment, something in me changed. Not quiet sadness anymore, but a small flame, low, steady, persistent. I don't want revenge. I want my place back. The place of a mother. A grandmother. The one who built the foundation they're standing on. That night, I took out the last letter Daniel wrote before he died. The ink had blurred, but I could still read the last line. "Teach our son to be a decent man, Iris. Don't let the world make him forget kindness." I did exactly that, until Sierra showed up, and turned what I built into a joke. She stripped away Caleb's trust, made him think I was outdated, old-fashioned, someone who should be kept at a distance. She taught my grandkids that love can be replaced with money, that respect is only for people with cash. I'm not young enough to start over, but I'm still strong enough to end what's wrong. And this time, I won't let anyone, not even a daughter-in-law, take my family from me again. I stood up, opened the cabinet, and looked at the old photos on the wall. Daniel, Caleb, then each grandchild. 3 generations. 3 sets of arms I've held and shielded. They are the reason I keep going. I put my hand on the leather notebook where I'd written those 4 words. Truth, justice, family, healing. For the first time in years I heard my own voice whisper in the quiet house. "Daniel, rest easy." I'm about to do what I should have done a long time ago. And that very night, I wrote a plan for the next 2 weeks, step by step, detail by detail. Tomorrow, Sierra will bring the kids here, thinking I'm just a harmless babysitter. But she doesn't know, this old teacher has spent a lifetime preparing to teach the hardest lesson to those who mistake kindness for weakness. At 7 a.m. the next morning, the engine of Sierra's silver SUV buzzed at the gate. I'd been up since 5 a.m., coffee brewed, and all the curtains open to let in the light. The house felt different today, quiet, tidy, and ready for a big experiment. Sierra stepped out, stilettos clicking on the brick walkway. She dragged 3 suitcases bigger than her slim frame. No greeting, no glance around, no stepping inside. She stood on the porch, checking her watch like she just wanted to be done. The 3 kids trailed behind Mason, 12, glued to his phone, Tessa, 10, scowling like the world owed her something, and Oliver, 7, clutching an iPad almost as big as his face. Sierra spoke in an even icy tone, like reading a task list to an assistant. Mason doesn't eat gluten, Tessa is allergic to peanuts, Oliver only sleeps with white noise. Don't give them regular milk, use the organic kind in the blue suitcase. Oh, and don't let them watch too much TV, unless they want to. That last line nearly made me laugh. I stood in the doorway and smiled. Thanks for the notes. Leave everything to me. Sierra nodded. Voice flat as ice water. My flight's at 9 a.m. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Don't call me, unless it's truly serious. Then she turned away without hugging her kids, without a goodbye. Just the sound of heels fading, and the car door slamming. The 3 children stood still. Mason stayed glued to the screen. Tessa stomped her foot. Oliver started to whine. I want to watch YouTube. Mom lets me. I exhaled softly and said, calm as ever. In this house, if you want something, you have to earn it. 3 sets of eyes snapped to me. Surprised, annoyed, then irritated. I walked to the Wi-Fi modem in the corner, unplugged it, slipped the phones into my pocket, and turned back with the same small smile. Welcome to Grandma's house. I knew the storm was coming. Mason was the first to shout, What? What are you doing without Wi-Fi? How am I supposed to play? Tessa snapped. Nothing's fun at your house. It's so boring here. Oliver started wailing. I want the iPad. I want the iPad now. I stood still, looking at all 3 of them kids who didn't realize they were losing the most precious thing. Their childhood. You can yell, I said calmly, but yelling won't change the rules in this house. I opened a cabinet, took out a sheet I'd already prepared daily schedule, and taped it to the kitchen wall. 1. Wake up at 7 a.m. 2. Breakfast together, no phones. 3. 1 hour of study or reading in the morning. 4. Help around the house, make beds, wash dishes, sweep the yard. 5. No going out to play until after 4 p.m. Mason let out a short, mocking laugh. Who do you think you are, a teacher? I answered right away, without changing my tone. Yes, I used to be a teacher, and I never failed at teaching. His face flushed, and he threw a pillow onto the sofa. Tessa muttered something under her breath. Oliver tossed his blanket to the floor, stomped his feet, tears streaming down his face. The quiet little house turned into a miniature battlefield. But I didn't waver. I've taught a class of 20 high-energy kids during the rainy season. With the power out, and windows rattling. I know one rule. To teach, you let the kids explode first, then you teach them how to be calm. I let the 3 of them yell, then walked straight into the kitchen. The smell of pancake batter spread soft and warm. I beat the eggs, added milk, ladled the batter onto the pan, shaping bears, cats and bunnies the same shapes I used to make for Caleb when he was little. When the pancakes were done, I cut fruit into stars, plated it, added a bit of maple syrup, and a few crushed walnuts. I set 3 plates on the table without saying a word. Then I sat down, poured tea, and read the paper as if the chaos of 3 kids didn't exist. 10 minutes passed, and Oliver's crying faded. He crept toward the table, sniffed the aroma, and touched the bear-shaped pancake with a fingertip. Can I eat this? I looked up and smiled. Of course, if you wash your hands first. He ran to wash his hands, came back and sat to eat. A minute later, a small smile appeared on his tear-streaked face. "This is so good, Grandma," I said softly. "Thank you." Just a simple line, but something inside me melted. Mason and Tessa pretended not to care, but when I sat down a second plate, both of them glanced over. 10 minutes later I saw Mason walk over, take a plate, and sit down quietly. Tessa hesitated, but when Oliver laughed, she pulled out a chair and murmured, "I'm not eating because I'm hungry. I just want to know how you made the bear's ears so round." I chuckled. "That's a teacher's secret for stubborn kids." All three laughed. The first laughter this kitchen had heard in years. After breakfast, I cleared the table, and gave each of them a small job. Mason washed dishes, Tessa wiped the table, Oliver folded napkins. They pushed back, but they still did it clumsy. Awkward, but they did it. When the last bowl was set on the rack, I said, "Good job. Now you can go play in the yard." I saw a spark in Mason's eyes for the first time. Not because of a screen, but because of pride. In the afternoon, sunlight filled the house. I made tea and sat on the porch, listening to giggles rise from the backyard. Tessa was teaching Oliver how to blow soap bubbles. Mason was sketching something on the pavers. I didn't call them, or step in. I just watched a fragile, peaceful moment so beautiful, I had to take a deep breath to believe it was real. But that evening, when the sun set, the storm rolled back in. Mason snapped, because he was bored. Tessa got mad about no TV, and Oliver threw a fit because he missed the iPad. I quietly gathered all the devices into a wooden box, locked it, and set it on a high shelf. "If you follow the schedule tomorrow, I'll reconsider," I said. No extra explanations, no bargaining. All three were silent through dinner. Just the sound of silverware on plates. But when I cleared the table, Oliver's plate was clean, and Tessa had eaten half. That was the first win. Night fell, and I was exhausted. The storm inside me had just begun, but at least I knew I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I made tea, and wrote a few lines in my notebook. Day 1. They yelled, they cried, then they ate pancakes. Oliver smiled. I think underneath that anger are hearts begging to be loved the right way. Close to midnight, I heard a soft sound from the upstairs room, sniffling. I walked quietly, and cracked the door. Tessa was sitting on the bed, holding a small picture frame. I recognized it. It was the photo of me holding her, when she was just a few months old. The one Sierra once called tacky, and tossed into the box of old stuff. The girl was crying, shoulders shaking, tears rolling down her chin. I didn't step in, I stood at the doorway, and watched quietly. In that moment, I understood the rude, stubborn child. I was just learning how to hide her loneliness. I went back to my room, and closed the door softly, so I wouldn't break that rare moment. Outside the window, the late moon shone on the 4 words I'd written in my notebook. Truth. Justice. That night, I knew I was headed in the right direction. The storm might be long, but I could hear hope inside it, thin, but real. 3 days had passed since Sierra left, and the house was slowly finding the quiet rhythm I'd lost for years. Every morning, I brewed tea. The kids helped set the table. Mason had stopped grumbling. Tessa had started reading before bed, and Oliver liked to sit on my lap to hear stories. From the outside, anyone would think things were getting better. But inside me, another wave was quietly rising, cold, sharp, and dangerous. That evening, Nora came by carrying a big bag that looked like it belonged on a spy movie set. She set it on the table, took off her glasses, and smirked. "Here's everything you need, Mikes. A smoke detector camera, and cloud data extraction software. You sure you want to go this far, Iris?" I looked at my friend and said slowly, "Sierra wants to fight with lies. I just want the truth to speak, that's all." Nora nodded, then helped me install everything. We mounted a tiny camera in the hallway, right above an old frame. Another went in the living room, disguised in the wall clock. Many mics went under the sofa and in the planter. All the data would autosave to a cloud drive, only Nora and I had the password for. When everything was done, I sat down and felt a strange calm. I've spent my life teaching kids to be honest, but sometimes adults have to use tactics to protect what's right. On day 4, Mason was at the corner of the table doing homework. I noticed he kept texting, sneaking glances, looking uneasy when I got close. I didn't say anything, just poured milk for all three, and walked away. But that night, after everyone went to bed, I remembered Nora's story about how kids' clouds often held more secrets than their phones. I opened my computer and plugged in the drive Nora gave me. The software she'd installed popped up surprisingly simple. With just a few steps, I could access Mason's backup photos, messages, downloads, all stored in a cloud account Sierra had set up for him. I didn't plan to read private things, but when I saw a folder named School Trip San Diego, I paused. I remembered clearly Mason had never been to San Diego. I opened the folder, dozens of photos appeared. In one, Sierra stood pressed against a strange man by the beach. Their fingers were laced together. Her smile wasn't for the camera, it was a woman in love smile. Under the photo, number new life, number finally free. I read it over and over, new life, finally free. A chill ran down my spine. I scrolled, more photos, Sierra in a silk dress, a cocktail in her hand, the same man's arm around her, taken at an oceanfront hotel. This was definitely not a conference trip like she'd claimed. I dragged the photo aside and checked the file's hidden info. It read, Ronan-Pierce-Photography.com. The name hit like a hammer. I murmured, Ronan Pierce. I opened a browser and searched. In seconds, a social profile popped up, a freelance travel photographer in San Diego who'd shot for small brands. Among hundreds of shots, I recognized the familiar face, the man with Sierra. Ronan sun-browned, a smug smile, eyes staring straight into the lens like the world revolved around him. I kept digging. In tagged photos, Sierra showed up in a few blurry shots. No name, no caption, just heart emojis in the comments. The pieces started to click. The next day, I checked Caleb's bank accounts, which Sierra still had access to. Thanks to family sharing, each transaction was stored in confirmation emails. I scrolled, and my stomach tightened. Plane ticket to San Diego, $648. Ocean View Resort, $1,200. Charge to Caleb M. Montgomery. I didn't know when she opened a secondary card. Caleb probably never noticed he trusted his wife like a lot of good husbands do. And Sierra turned that trust into a tool to spend, to betray, and to destroy the man who supported her. I printed every invoice, put them in an envelope, and labeled it Evidence 1. On the table, I lined up the photos, a few message snippets, and the bank statements. I'd never been a spy. But in that moment, I felt like I was protecting a case for justice. That night, while the kids, they were doing puzzles in the living room, I asked lightly, as if offhand, "Hey, has anyone been coming over to see your mom lately?" Tessa looked up. "Just some of her girlfriends." Mason fidgeted, and glanced at his little brother. Oliver, as usual, was the most carefree. He looked up from the blocks and blurted, "Uncle Ronan. He played with us a few times. He even slept in Mom and Dad's room when Dad worked the night shift." The truth always comes from where you least expect, sometimes, through a clear, innocent voice. Oliver didn't know his words had changed everything. What do you think? Should a child know all the grown-ups' business? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I believe a lot of parents have wrestled with this. I felt like someone was squeezing my heart. Blood rushed to my face, but I kept steady, my voice even. "Yeah, Ronan. Is he nice to you?" "Super nice," Oliver said, smiling. "He bought pizza and let me play games. Mom said he's a coworker." I nodded, and gently ruffled his hair. "Got it." When the kids ran upstairs, I sat alone, watching the kitchen lights spill across the wooden table. I rested my hand on the thick envelope, cold white pages, holding the truth Caleb didn't know. On one side was the fake happiness Sierra had built. On the other was my family betrayed, dismissed, on the brink of being torn apart. And me, standing between those lines, knowing that if I stayed silent, I'd lose everything. I closed my eyes and took a long breath. No room left for tears. No room left for blind kindness. I grabbed a pen and added to the open journal page, Day 6. The truth has broken through, and it's uglier than I imagined. But that's okay. I've taught hundreds of kids how to face their mistakes. Now it's the adults' turn to learn that lesson. I closed the notebook and looked out the window, where the night breeze moved through the maples. Moonlight fell across the porch, lighting up the envelope like a warning. The war had officially begun. Tuesday morning started with a crack like summer thunder. I spun around, smoke pouring from the living room. Oliver, face smudged, was holding a spent firecracker. The curtain was streaked black, the edge curled, the stench of burning plastic filling the room. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I stepped quickly over, yanked the cord to drop the curtain, and put out the fire with a small extinguisher in the corner. When the flames were out, Oliver started to shake. He stammered, "I just wanted to see it pop." Tessa stood behind him, pale, and Mason was silent, eyes on me, like he was bracing for my anger. I set the extinguisher down, brushed the dust off my sleeve, and said, "Light his air. In this house, the only person allowed to make smoke is Grandma when I'm baking. Anyone else has to ask first." The tension dipped, and I looked at all three souls swept up in the storms of adults, not yet knowing where they'd gone wrong. I pulled out a chair, sat, and spoke slowly. "Do you know what this house used to be?" Mason shrugged. "An old house." I smiled slightly. "It's where your dad learned to read his first words. It's where your grandpa sat with his tea every morning, and where I taught dozens of neighborhood kids when the school closed. It's history. It's the heart of this family." Tessa lowered her head, and Oliver just clutched the edge of his shirt. I looked around. The black scorch on the curtain hadn't faded yet, and I didn't plan to clean it right away. I wanted them to remember with a real image. Then I spoke, light as if telling a story. "If your mother thinks she's getting this house, she's wrong." Three small faces lifted at the same time, eyes wide with surprise. I continued, keeping my voice as even as if I were talking about the weather. "I've changed my will. Everything will go to a children's charity in Portland. Kids who have no one to teach them what's right, like you right now." The air in the room turned heavy. Tessa's eyes flew open, and Mason jumped up, voice cracking. "What? Why would you do that?" I answered calmly, "Because I don't want love to be misunderstood. If all you value is money and things, then those aren't worth leaving behind." That single sentence was enough to ignite their anger. Mason shouted and punched the wall. Tessa burst into tears, screaming that I hated their mom, and Oliver threw a pillow at me, yelling, "Mom says you're cruel, now I believe it." I didn't react. I stood still, one hand on the table, feeling their anger swell like waves. I knew those weren't children's words. They were echoes of an adult. The lines Sierra had poured into their ears for too long. They smashed things, tore photos off the shelf, knocked over a vase, and hurled a family frame to the floor. The sound of breaking glass rang through the house. But I stayed there. No yelling, no threats, no tears. On the wall the camera Nora installed kept silently recording everything. I let the little storm pass, like someone who's learned to wait after decades of being a mother and a teacher. When the three of them were spent, hard breathing, replacing crying, I stepped forward, gathered the broken frames, and set them on the table. Then I opened a drawer, took out 3 savings passbooks and placed them in front of them. I spoke very slowly, letting each word drop to the floor like small pebbles. "These 3 passbooks are yours. Every month, I've put in a little from my pension and tutoring savings. I planned for you to open them when you turn 18, so you'd know love isn't just words. But if you treat love with contempt, I'll close them. For good." No one said a word. Only the ticking of the clock. I saw the hardness fade from Mason's eyes. Tessa swallowed, and Oliver stared at the cover with his name on it. Then they sat down, without anyone telling them to. Their small shoulders slumped not from fear, but from confusion. I didn't comfort them. I quietly went to make tea. When I came back, I set a mug of hot cocoa in front of each child, and sat down across from them. "You don't need to apologize. Anger is normal. But you have to learn to use it to understand, not to hurt." I told them about kids I used to teach, some who lost a father, some whose mother went to jail, some who had no one come to pick them up after class. "They acted out like you did today," I said. "But once they knew who really loved them, they changed. Because love can't be bought, and it can't be forced." Mason looked at me, those once defiant eyes now wet. Do you? Do you hate our mom? I gently shook my head. No. I'm just sorry. A good mother teaches her child how to love, and how to feel ashamed when they're wrong. Your mother forgot that? Tessa asked softly, her voice trembling. If we say sorry, will you open the accounts again? I smiled and patted her head. I never locked them. The key is in how you live. That afternoon I called Derek, Nora's younger brother, who works for CPS Child Protective Services. I asked him to stop by for a home visit, calling it a routine check. I didn't want to scare them, just a gentle presence to help the kids understand that the world has people who are watching, who care and who are ready to help. Derek arrived at 3 o'clock. He's tall, with a deep voice and kind eyes. He sat on the sofa and smiled at the 3 kids. Hey guys. I'm here to see if you're living happily, that's all. Anyone being forced to eat veggies here? The question made Oliver laugh, and Tessa giggled. Mason stayed quiet, but his face had softened. Derek chatted gently, asking about school, friends, and each child's feelings. When he heard Tessa say, "Grandma makes us read before bed," he nodded. Sounds great, books are probably better than phones, huh? Tessa pressed her lips together, smiled shyly, then nodded. After the home visit, Derek pulled me onto the porch and said quietly, "These kids have clearly been emotionally neglected for a long time, Iris. What you're doing, gentle but firm, is right. They just need to feel safe." I nodded, feeling some of the weight lift. When Derek left, I saw the 3 kids sitting on the front steps, quietly watching the red sunset cover the trees. No arguing, no phone sounds, just the glow of the day's last light reflected in their eyes. Standing inside, looking through the doorway, I saw Mason tilt his head and say something. And all 3 of them laughed, a real laugh. Not forced, not bitter. I knew the ice was thawing, the anger had passed, and where it moved through, the ground softened enough for a kind seed to be planted. I held my cup of cold tea and whispered to myself, "She thinks I'm just a babysitter, but these very children are teaching me how to win." Outside, the wind carried the smell of freshly cut grass. Portland sky shifted slowly. And inside me, another plan began to take shape, deeper, sharper, and more certain than ever. 2 days after Derek left, the air in my house felt strangely calm. Mason got up early to help me water the plants. Tessa practiced making pancakes, and Oliver no longer asked for the iPad he liked sitting next to me, munching on a cookie while telling school stories. The house that used to echo only with the clock now held children's laughter again. But beneath that peace, I knew there was one thing I couldn't delay any longer. It was time to talk to Caleb. I couldn't let my son be deceived anymore, but I also knew that telling a man the truth about the woman he loves could shatter his whole world. I had to prepare everything carefully, not just evidence, but a way for him to face it. That morning, I called Caleb. My son's voice came through the phone, tired and hoarse after a long work day. "Mom? I'm at the site. I don't get a day off until tomorrow." I kept my tone even. "I need you to stop by. I think the porch roof is leaking. It'll only take a few minutes." Caleb sighed, but answered, "Okay, Mom. I'll come by tonight." I knew Caleb wouldn't suspect a thing. To him, I was still just the mom who fussed over small stuff. When I hung up, I looked around the living room and took a deep breath. In the corner sat the envelope with all the evidence I'd gathered. Photos of Sierra and Ronan, credit card statements, messages, hotel invoices, and even the recording of Oliver saying, "Uncle Ronan slept over." I organized every page and clipped them into a thick file labeled, "Truth." At noon, Dr. Meera Patel arrived. She's an old friend of Nora's, a well-known child psychologist in the area. I'd called her after seeing the kids' troubling behavior, explosive anger, fear, reactions when their mother was mentioned, and the emptiness in their eyes. Dr. Patel spoke with each child, her voice warm and steady like a familiar aunt. All 3 were guarded at first, then gradually opened up. Tessa said her mom often called me a controlling old lady. Mason said he was scared his mom would get angry whenever he mentioned his dad. And Oliver, he said one line that stabbed my heart. "Mom says don't trust anyone, not even Dad." After more than an hour, Dr. Patel sat with me on the porch. She spoke gently, but firmly. All 3 kids show signs of emotional manipulation. They've learned to fear love, instead of trust it. If this continues, they'll grow up in confusion, doubting even themselves. I was stunned. Anger flared inside me, but only for a moment. I'm past the age of rage. What I have left is resolve. I took Dr. Patel's hand and said, "Can you help me document this? If needed, I'll bring in a lawyer." "Of course." She nodded. "I'll prepare a formal assessment. You're doing the right thing, Iris." When she left, I felt lighter. Not because I had another ally, but because I knew the truth was being written down undeniable. Late afternoon, I straightened the house, and prepared for the most important evening since this all began. Mason helped wipe the table, Tessa arranged cookies, and Oliver brought tea out to the porch. They didn't know what was coming, just that I was quieter than usual. Around 8 o'clock, I heard Caleb's car at the gate. I saw my son step out, blue work shirt stained with grease, calloused hands, dark circles under his eyes. He looked older than his years, but when he saw me, there was still a hint of the warmth I used to hold in my arms. "The roof's not leaking, Mom," he said with a small smile. I answered, "It's not the roof, but something in this house is leaking trust." Caleb frowned. I pointed to a chair for him to sit. On the table, the thick file was ready. I started by opening the laptop. Right in front of Caleb were photos of Sierra with Ronan smiles, fingers intertwined, and the caption number, "New life number, finally free." Then the credit card statements, large transactions, in his own name. Finally the messages between Sierra and R, he's too busy to notice anything, were almost there. Caleb went silent. I watched his shoulders begin to shake. His hand gripped the table edge. Then he spoke slowly, voice rough. "No way, Mom." I set my hand on his light, but steady. "Sierra's been unfaithful, Caleb. And she's dragged you into wrongdoing you had no idea about." He looked up, eyes wet. "What did I do wrong? I just wanted us to be okay. I worked myself to exhaustion to make her happy. Why me?" There was no gentle answer that could soothe that pain. I just spoke slowly, word by word. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just loved the wrong person." A long silence fell. The clock ticked like the heartbeat of the house. Finally, Caleb buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook, and he cried. I hadn't seen my son cry since he was 10. A grown man's tears aren't loud. They fall in silence. Each one heavy, like the years he'd been trapped in a false marriage, were finally sliding off. I quietly handed him a tissue, my heart twisting. That's motherhood. No matter how old your child is, his tears still melt you like salt in water. Caleb's crying woke the kids upstairs. Tessa opened her door, and Mason and Oliver followed. Saw their dad on the sofa, head down, and me sitting beside him. Mason hesitated. "Dad? What's wrong?" Caleb looked up and wiped his face, but his eyes were still red. I started to speak, but he lifted a hand. He wanted to talk to them himself. "I'm sorry," Caleb said, voice shaking. "I didn't protect your mom or you. I let things go too far." Tessa stepped closer and put a hand on his shoulder. "Dad, did Mom do something wrong?" Caleb choked up. He looked at his 3 children, pain in his eyes, but something else rising too. "Resolve. Your mom will have to face what she's done," he said softly but firmly. "And we were going to start over." Oliver didn't understand it all. He just hugged his dad and burst into tears. Tessa leaned in too, tears rolling. Mason stood still for a second, then moved in and wrapped his arms around all 3. The 4 of them hugged and cried, as if that rain had waited years to finally fall. I sat and watched, my heart full of sorrow and relief. I knew this pain was necessary only when a heart breaks. Do you see what's truly worth keeping? I stood, took a light blanket, and draped it over Caleb and the kids. The light fell across the gray now showing at my son's temples. In that moment, I saw Daniel, my husband. If he were alive, he would be doing exactly what I was doing now. I whispered, though no one could hear. Our family is finally being saved. Then I stepped onto the porch and sat on the steps. Out there, the new moon hung over the maples, its pale light covering the neighborhood. I closed my eyes. Let the wind move through my hair, and felt a strange peace. Inside, kids' cries mixed with a father's comforting, no longer the sound of pain, but the sound of a beginning. I knew tomorrow would be a long day, we'd have to face Sierra, the truth, and justice. But tonight, just tonight, I allowed myself to believe this. Love, no matter how battered, can still be saved, as long as someone is willing to stand up and protect it. After the night Caleb broke down in tears, my house seemed to breathe differently. Not because everything was okay, but because for the first time in years, everyone actually saw each other. No more forced conversations or empty hugs. We spoke honestly, listened honestly, and hurt honestly. The next morning, Caleb hugged me in the kitchen. He didn't say anything. He just stood there a long time. I understood. Some regrets don't need words. When he let go, I said, "It's time for you to take leave. To protect yourself and the kids." He nodded, voice still rough. "I already put in for 2 weeks off. I want to move in here, Mom. At least until things are clear." And just like that, a broken family began to piece itself back together. In this old house, not with money, but with courage and honesty. We named our new way of living the Respect Project. Mason came up with it after I explained that respect is the starting point for every healthy relationship. I bought a whiteboard and hung it in the living room. In the center I wrote in bold marker, "The Respect Project, 4 principles of the Montgomery family." 1. Keep a schedule. No one gets to live in chaos. 2. Take responsibility. If you mess up, you fix it. If you do right, you get credit. 3. Show gratitude. Every good thing, even small, deserves a thank you. 4. Lead with love. No one gets left behind. No one gets judged in silence. Caleb finished reading, half smiling, half awkward. "You still teach like you're in class, huh, Mom?" I smiled gently. "Habit from 35 years in the classroom, son." We started with small steps. In the mornings, Mason helped me in the yard. He learned to mow, pull weeds, and understand that the ground only blooms when you tend it every day. Tessa was assigned to cook with me. At first she was clumsy, flour everywhere, eggs broken in her hands. But after a few days, she could season, whisk batter, and beam every time the cake rose evenly in the oven. Oliver, the youngest, got clean-up duty, put away toys, wipe the table, fold blankets. He loved it because for the first time, someone truly believed he could do it. Every time they finished a task, I praised them, not empty praise, but "Thank you for trying for real." They were surprised. Maybe no one had said that to them in a long time. In the afternoons, Dr. Meera Patel came for therapy. 3 sessions a week, each almost 2 hours. She spoke with each person, then with all of us together. She told the kids, manipulation isn't love. When someone makes you scared, it makes you feel at fault. Even when you didn't do anything wrong, that's not love, Mason asked. What if that person is your mom? Dr. Patel looked him straight in the eyes, gentle but not avoiding it. Then, you need to speak the truth even more. Real love isn't afraid of the light. I watched Mason lower his head. His hands clenched, and I knew something inside him was shifting. After the second session, Tessa brought me a drawing. 4 people were on it. Me, Caleb, her, and her 2 brothers. In the corner she'd scribbled, "Real family." I couldn't say a word. I just pulled her into my arms, the smell of a child's hair mixed with the scent of cookie dough, and my heart warmed. Sometimes healing begins with a sheet of paper full of color like that. In the days that followed, the house buzzed like it hadn't in years. Morning laughter from the kitchen, noon with Mason playing ball with Oliver, in the yard, evenings with all of us around the table, sharing small stories. No one talked about Sierra anymore, but I knew her name still hung in the air like a cloud that hadn't cleared. One evening, while I was folding laundry, Mason suddenly asked, "Grandma, why didn't you push back earlier? When Mom started treating us badly, when she lied, why didn't you tell Dad right away?" The question was a light blade, but I didn't dodge it. I set the stack of clothes down and looked him in the eye. Because I thought silence was love. I thought if I kept the peace, things would calm down. But I was wrong, Mason. Staying silent about wrongdoing only makes it bigger, hurts the good people, and makes the bad ones think they're right. He nodded slowly, then said softly, "I get it. I used to stay quiet when Mom yelled at my siblings because I was afraid she'd hate me. I ruffled his hair. Now, you know, don't you? Courage isn't fighting, it's speaking up for what's right. Mason smiled. The first real teenage smile. Friday afternoon, we decided to do something special, write letters to Sierra. Not to blame her, but to let go. I set out pens, paper, and envelopes. Caleb sat at the table, face serious, but eyes softer now. Each of us wrote a letter. I wrote a short note to my former daughter-in-law Sierra. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just sorry. You had everything: a husband who loved you, 3 smart kids, a warm home, but you didn't see the real value of it. I hope someday you learn that power isn't controlling others. It's taking responsibility for your own heart. Tessa wrote, Mom, I miss you, but I'm scared of you too. I hope you learn how to say, I'm sorry. Mason wrote just one line, I forgive you, but I won't forget. Oliver drew a picture: 4 people holding hands, and a woman standing far away on a hill next to the Sunday. He scrawled underneath, Mom is going to school to learn how to love. When Caleb read that, he couldn't hold back tears. He set the drawing down and took my hand. Mom, I don't know when I'll ever forget, but I want to start over. I squeezed his hand and said softly, You don't need to forget, son. You just need to remember differently. We went out to the backyard where Daniel's old fire pit still stood. The sun was low and the golden light stretched across the planks. Caleb lit the fire, and the kids held their letters. I said, burning these isn't to erase anything, it's to release it. Imagine the smoke carrying the heavy things away, and giving your heart back to you. One by one, the letters went into the flames. I heard the paper crackle, smelled smoke sweet like pine. The fire flickered across our faces, sad and peaceful all at once. Tessa looked at me and whispered, Grandma, we're a real family now, right? I smiled and patted her head. Yes, because real family doesn't need to be perfect. We just need to keep learning, respect, and love together. Caleb stood behind me, slipped an arm around my shoulders, and said quietly, You. No, Mom, maybe the Respect Project is the best thing you've ever taught me. I looked at him, half teasing, half serious. So what grade are you giving this course? A plus, he laughed, eyes bright in the firelight. When the fire died down, we still sat together. Mason tucked a sprig of lavender into the ashes. Tessa leaned on her dad's shoulder, and Oliver fell asleep on my lap. The night breeze carried the scent of flowers and smoke through my gray hair. I looked up at the deep black sky, where a few stars had just come out. Inside me I heard the familiar whisper, Daniel, do you see? I did it. Our family is coming back to life. That night, for the first time in years, slept deeply. No shattered dreams, no shouting memories. Just warmth, as if this old house, after all its storms, had finally been patched with a cement called respect. That morning began with the smell of fresh-baked cookies. The scent Tessa was proud to say she'd made all by herself. I was brewing tea when I heard her running down the stairs, urgent and different. Her face had gone pale, and her hand gripped something small. Grandma, her voice trembled, I have this. I think Mom will be mad if she knows I took it. I set the cup down and pulled out a chair. Sit, sweetie, tell me. She held out a small silver USB drive. Pink strap worn thin. I found it in Mom's old coat pocket. I borrowed the coat yesterday, and dropped it by accident. When I plugged it in, I got scared and pulled it out. But I saw a lot of pictures, strange ones. I think you should see. I looked at my little granddaughter. Her hand was ice cold, her eyes full of fear. I didn't ask more. I nodded, and hugged her tight. You did the right thing, Tessa, thank you. In that moment I realized she's only 10, but she had a courage many adults don't. I waited until the kids were on the school bus, then plugged the USB into the laptop. The screen lit up with 3 folders, photos, plans, and audio. I opened the first. Dozens of images came up: Sierra and Ronan in different places. The beach, hotels, restaurants. One shot in a car. Sierra's head on his shoulder, smiling wide. But those photos didn't shock me as much as what was in plans. Inside were documents, property transfer copies, a lease for a place in San Diego, and a Word file named Escape plan, Doc, X. I opened it. The first line froze my heart. Step 1. When back in Portland, provoke the kids, record Iris yelling to use as evidence of abuse. Step 2. Use the fake Caleb hitting the kids video. Send to a family lawyer. Ronan will edit. Step 3. Apply legal pressure to force Iris out of the house. Win custody and take the rest of the assets. I went still. My eyes burned, but my chest didn't shake, only a steel-cold feeling rose. I opened the last folder. Audio. There were several short recordings. One longer clip, about 12 minutes long, was labeled, "Try to, real clip." I clicked. Sierra's voice came on, light and smug. "Ronan, listen. Should we add crying here? So people believe it more?" A man's voice laughed. "Add it. When the court hears the Caleb hitting the kids part, no one will guess it's fake. With this, you can take everything." Sierra chuckled and said lightly, "I told you Iris is old and slow. She'll never guess she's housing the evidence that'll take her down." I closed the file. The room went dead quiet, only the ticking clock. My hands trembled a little. Not from fear, but from a mix of fury and pity. A woman I once called daughter-in-law had gone this far. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was willing to destroy her own children to get what she wanted. I called attorney Alicia Romero, who had helped me redo my will before. After listening, she paused a few seconds, then said, "Miss Iris, what you have is extremely strong evidence. This isn't a family matter anymore. It's criminal, falsifying evidence, financial fraud, and emotional manipulation of minors." I took a long breath. "Alicia, I don't want police involved just to get even. I only want to protect the kids." "I understand," she said. "Then let me help you do it the right way. Email me an encrypted copy of the USB now. I'll loop in Derek and we'll set a plan." 2 hours later, Derek arrived. He brought a laptop and CPS files. After going through the USB, he shut the computer and looked up at me. "You were right to stay quiet. We'll report to the police tomorrow morning. But first I need to line up protection for the kids." I asked, "Are you sure they'll be safe, Derek?" "I won't take my eyes off them, Iris. And I can make sure Sierra can't get near them without a court say-so." We planned into the night. Alicia would file an emergency petition with family court. Derek would prepare a CPS report on neglect and manipulation. Caleb and I would lock down anything Sierra could use: medical files, family photos. When things were set, Caleb put his hand over mine. Voice rough but steady. "I'm not afraid anymore, Mom. She's taken too much from me. This time, I'm taking it back." I looked at my son. His eyes, red from sleepless nights, still held a fierce light I hadn't seen in a long time. I knew the broken man from the other night was gone. I stood and wrote on the living room whiteboard, right under the respect project we'd penned before. Law, truth, love, safety. 4 simple words, but I wanted the kids to see them every day. I wanted them to know justice isn't revenge, it's how the world balances what's been twisted. Tessa walked in, read it, and asked, "Grandma, why does it say law too?" I patted her head and smiled. "Because some good things need more than a heart. They need the law to protect them. I'll teach you that." That night the house was quieter than usual. Caleb sat at the table, reviewing every page. I was getting blankets when I heard a knock. Tessa, Mason, and Oliver stood there. All 3 a little shy. "Grandma," Mason said, "can we sleep with you tonight?" I froze for a second, then nodded. "Of course, kids." They piled into my bed under the big comforter, Oliver in the middle. His fingers locked around mine. Tessa leaned on her brother's shoulder, and Mason stared at the ceiling. Whispering, "I don't know what's going to happen, but I trust you." I squeezed their hands, warm and firm. "Just remember one thing. The truth is always stronger than lies. It can be buried, but it never disappears." They all nodded, and fell asleep fast. I lay still, listening to their steady breathing and the porch wind. For the first time in years, this house truly slept. No shouting, no shadow of fear. Just the warmth of 3 children curled close, proof that good things still have room to grow even after being trampled. I whispered into the dark, almost like a prayer. Justice Day isn't far. And that night, I knew the fight ahead would be brutal. But this time, I had something Sierra would never understand: the trust of a real family. The next noon, Portland sunlight was unusually bright. The sky was clear, but inside me, a string was pulled tight. Caleb was in the living room, straightening the stack of documents Alicia had just organized. Derek had the kids out back, and I was making ginger tea, hands still slightly shaking. At 12:15 p.m., suitcase wheels scraped across the gravel path. The door opened. Sierra walked in beige silk dress, glossy heels, expensive perfume trailing down the hall. She stood there, the same smug confidence as always. Voice clipped. "Oh, finally remembered to open the door for me? I'm home, Iris." I didn't answer. I just poured more tea, then turned toward the living room table where Alicia and Caleb were already seated. Sierra stopped short. I caught a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "What is going on here?" she asked, her voice higher than usual. Alicia looked up with a polite smile. "Hello, Miss Sierra. I'm Alicia Romero, attorney for Mr. Caleb Montgomery." The whole room seemed to hold its breath. Sierra darted a glance at me. Then at Caleb, the husband she'd once treated like a puppet. He stayed silent, his eyes strangely cold. "Caleb," Sierra snapped. "Why did you call a lawyer?" He answered slowly, voice rough but clear. "To have an adult conversation, not one built on lies." Alicia opened her briefcase, took out a small silver USB drive and set it neatly on the table. "Miss Sierra, before we begin, I'd like you to hear your own voice." She played an audio file. Sierra's voice filled the room, bright, sweet, and dripping with contempt. "The kids are just obstacles. Caleb is dumb and easy to control. When I'm done, that house will be mine." Sierra froze, her lips trembling. "Where did you get that?" Alicia kept a faint smile. "That isn't important. What matters is confirming." "Is this your voice?" The air grew thick. I saw sweat beading at Sierra's temple, her hands starting to shake. "That's edited. Someone set me up," she yelled, her tone shrill. Caleb said nothing. He simply pushed a thick file toward her. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, airline tickets, and a lease in Scottsdale, Arizona, all under the name Sierra Pierce. Alicia spoke slowly and clearly, as if reading an indictment. Credit card opened in the husband's name, without authorization. Fraudulent transactions. Sale of a jointly registered vehicle. And most importantly, a lease in Scottsdale signed with Ronan Pierce. Sierra went pale, stepped back, her voice cracking. "I don't know who did that. Ronan did it on his own. I had nothing to do with it." Alicia opened her laptop and turned the screen so Sierra could see. There she was, in a San Diego bar, hand in hand with Ronan, smiling, captioned, "Number new start, number finally free." "I didn't." Sierra tried to protest, her voice fading. "Those are old pictures. This is all fabricated. I'm being framed." I looked at her and felt no anger now, only emptiness. 35 years of teaching had shown me every kind of student. Stubborn, lazy, dishonest, the most talented excuse makers. But none had made me feel both pity and regret the way this daughter-in-law did. I set my teacup down and met Sierra's eyes. "I didn't set you up, Sierra. I simply let you speak for yourself." She opened her mouth to shoot back, but just then, the back door eased open. Tessa came in, clutching her old teddy bear. No one moved. She took a few steps, and stopped in front of her mother. "Mom?" she said, voice shaking but firm. "Don't touch me." Silence swallowed the room. Sierra looked as if she'd been slapped. Her lips trembled, her eyes glossy. But no tears came. Tessa turned and hugged her father, and then Mason and Oliver came in to stand beside them. 3 small bodies standing in a row next to Caleb, while Sierra stood alone. I saw my son's shoulders tremble. Then he bent to hold all 3 children. In that moment, I knew the real victory had begun. Not the victory of the law, but of truth and love. Alicia quietly gathered the papers, then slid a thin stack toward Sierra. "You have 2 choices, Miss Sierra," she said, her voice even as a verdict. 1. Sign here, an uncontested divorce, and a full relinquishment of custody. 2. We go to court. With falsified evidence, financial fraud, and emotional manipulation of minors, you could face at least 5 years in prison. Sierra stared at the paper, her face chalk white. No. You can't do this to me. I'm their mother, Alicia replied, tone unchanged. A mother never uses her children as tools. That right is gone, as of today. The room filled with the tick of the clock. I watched Sierra sink into a chair, fingers gripping the pen until her knuckles went white. She looked at Caleb, pleading, "You'll forgive me, right? For the kids?" Caleb lifted his head, eyes dry and hard. "For the kids, I can't." His voice sliced the air clean in two. Sierra shook, then signed. The signature was jagged and rushed, like one last cut to the past. Alicia gathered the file and nodded. "Thank you, Miss Sierra. This ends here." As Sierra stood, I stepped forward and poured more tea. She stared at me, her eyes a tangle. Hate, fear, and a hint of ruin. I set the cup in front of her and said, calm but audible too, "All. I taught for 35 years, Sierra. I've taught lost children, and those who didn't grasp what dignity means. But I've never had a student as poor as you." Sierra stood frozen, mouth working but no words coming. Then she turned away, pulling her suitcase to the door. The wheels scraping across the wood, cold as metal against a heart. When the door closed, the house fell quiet. I heard the wind on the porch, and the children's soft breathing behind me. Caleb dropped into a chair, buried his head in his hands, then broke down. I laid a hand on his shoulder and said softly, "It's over, son. We've come through the darkest part." Mason stepped up and pulled his younger brother closer. Tessa wiped her tears and looked at me. "Grandma, where will Mom go now?" I met her eyes, gentle, but steady. "Your mother will have to find her own way. As for us, we stay and rebuild this home." All 3 children nodded. In their eyes I saw no fear, now only trust. Later that afternoon, as Alicia was leaving, she squeezed my hand and murmured, "Miss Iris, this might be the most unforgettable divorce case of my career. But I have to say, you're the strongest woman I've ever met." I smiled, tired but lighter. "No, Alicia, I'm just a mother who knows when to stand up." Sunlight flowed through the window onto the table, where the words on the whiteboard remained clear. Law, truth, love, safety. Outside, the children's laughter drifted across the lavender. I poured myself fresh tea and took a long breath. The ginger warmth mingled with the flowers, sharp, bold and comforting. In that moment, I knew, this battle wasn't only about reclaiming justice. It was also a journey to reteach our whole family, including myself, the last lesson of my life. Love isn't enduring abuse. And sometimes, silence is no virtue. It's complicity. 3 weeks passed after the divorce papers were signed, and the house eased back into its old rhythm, simple, slow, and calm. Caleb returned to work. Mason helped me in the garden. Tessa learned to bake. Oliver drew pictures and taped them all over the kitchen walls. In the evenings we watched old movies, or just listened to the rain on the porch. Those days felt so peaceful, I sometimes forgot the storm wasn't truly gone. That afternoon, the sky turned heavy gray. Portland held its breath before a hard rain. I was arranging flowers in the living room when I heard tires screech at the gate. A black SUV pulled up, and the door flew open. A woman stepped out, red dress, high heels. Makeup so thick it looked stiff, Sierra. Beside her stood a man I'd never seen. Black suit, file case in hand, and behind them was Ronan Pierce. I watched the 3 cross the yard, face neutral, while my heart thumped steady and loud. Sierra smirked when she saw me open the door. "I'm here to get justice. This man is a social worker we have the right to inspect." I tilted my head slightly and answered as calmly as I could. "Justice? Good. But before he does anything, please come in. Here, everything is recorded." She flipped her hair and stepped inside, rolling her suitcase. Ronan followed, far less sure of himself than before, eyes flickering. The so-called social worker flashed a badge and spoke quickly. "We received a report that Miss Iris Montgomery is emotionally abusing minors. I smiled, without a hint of panic. How interesting. Please have a seat. And why don't we start by watching a video? I switched on the big screen in the living room and played the video. I'd kept the day the kids lost their temper and smashed things. The image was clear. I stood still, in the chaos. No yelling, no hitting, just quietly picking up. The audio filled the room, my voice gentle. Speaking to Mason, Tessa, and Oliver. You don't need to apologize. Anger is normal. But learn to use it to understand, not to hurt. Sierra went pale. The social sows worker stared at the screen and stepped back a little. I turned to him. Does this look like abuse to you, Mr. Social Worker? He stammered and didn't answer. Right then, the door opened behind me. Caleb walked in blue shirt, expression like steel. Behind him were attorney Alicia and Derek, the real CPS officer. The room suddenly felt smaller. Derek strode up to the man and showed a real credential. I'm Derek Fields, CPS, Multnomah County. And you are? The man froze. Face draining. I was just hired. I didn't. By whom? All eyes landed on Sierra. She stood rigid, hands clenched and shaking. Ronan stared at the floor, shoulders locked. Sierra? Caleb said, voice rough but commanding. You again? She sprang up, voice shrill. I just want to see my kids. You're keeping them from me. I had to do this to get my rights back. Alicia calmly opened her briefcase and laid out a copy of the USB audio files, photos, and the plan to run off with Ronan. Miss Sierra, what we have here shows you orchestrated false reports, hired someone to impersonate a state employee, and fabricated abuse claims. You know how serious that is. Ronan blurted, voice breaking with fear. It was her. She told me to help, said we'd just scare them. I didn't know we'd be charged. Sierra whipped toward him, screaming, shut up, you were getting your cut too. But Ronan was already backing away, practically running out, leaving Sierra alone in the crowded room. She turned to me, eyes wild, resentful, frantic, desperate. What do you want from me, Iris? You took everything, house, kids, husband, what more do you want? I stood, answering slowly. I don't want anything, Sierra. I want the truth. And today, truth came on its own. Nobody had to call it. Derek stepped forward, voice firm. Per policy, from this point on, Miss Sierra, you may only see your children under CPS supervision. Any violation, and you'll be charged for impersonating a public employee. Sierra shook and choked out. You're stealing my kids. Just then, the door opened. The three children stood on the threshold, having heard everything. Tessa stepped forward first, eyes bright but unafraid. She didn't hurt us, she said, steady. She taught us how to love. Oliver squeezed his sister's hand and added, Mom lied. Grandma never hit us. Mason looked at his mother cold and sad at once, and spoke slowly, word by word. You say she stole us, but really, you left us first. Sierra staggered, and dropped to her knees in the middle of the living room. Rain began outside, drumming on the roof, blending with sobs that wouldn't form words. Caleb looked down at her. Weary, but resolute. I begged you to stop, Sierra. You didn't listen. Don't blame anyone now. She lifted her head, eyes blazing with hate. You'll all regret this. I answered, calm as if speaking to a law student. No, Sierra. Only liars regret the light. We're just living honestly. When the police arrived, they took statements and collected devices and evidence. Sierra was ordered to leave the house while the court reviewed the case. She kicked and cried while Derek kept his voice even. Miss Sierra, you need to cooperate. If you truly love your children, start by taking responsibility. She stumbled out onto the porch. The rain was pouring. The ground was soaked. Her dress muddy. Her stiletto heels stuck in the muck. Ronan had vanished, leaving a suitcase and a broken umbrella. Sierra dropped to her knees, clutching her head, screaming into the rain. You're stealing my children. Mason, standing in the doorway, looked at his mother one last time. Voice calm and aching. No one stole anything from you. You lost us yourself. The door closed. This time for good. Inside, The kids stood in silence. I wrapped my arms around them, felt the warmth of 3 small bodies. Caleb came behind us, his arms around all of us as if to shield us with his own body. No one spoke. Only the rain fell, washing away the last residue of lies. When the police car's sound faded, I looked around the room, the tea still steaming. The whiteboard still hanging with its words. Law, truth, love, safety. I poured more tea, and handed a cup to each one. Ginger warmth spread through the house. "Did we win, Grandma?" Oliver asked softly. I smiled. "Not a win, sweetheart. We're free." The kids leaned against me, eyes drooping. Caleb stood by the window, looking out at the rain, and said softly, "Mom, thank you." I turned, took his hand. "Don't thank me. Thank the truth. It saved all of us." That night, I sat and wrote the final lines in my journal before closing this chapter of my life. When people choose to lie, they think they're winning. In reality, they're just building a prison around themselves. But when we stand with the truth, even if it costs us, even if it hurts, freedom will find us. And within freedom, there is love, there is justice, there is peace. I set down my pen, and blew out the candle. Outside, the rain had stopped. On the sky, a thin band of light appeared at the horizon. Not a rainbow, but the gentle glow of the coming dawn. 6 months passed, since the door closed behind Sierra. Time heals in its own way. Not with miracles, but with small, daily things. Children's laughter, the smell of morning pastries, or the soft sunlight slipping through the curtains when I opened my eyes. The house that once felt like a battleground, has become a real home. Everyone has found a role, a joy, and a better way to love. I opened a small class in the living room. A wooden sign, hand-lettered, reads, "Iris's Art and Home Kitchen." The idea started when Tessa invited classmates over to paint. Then a few neighbors heard and brought their kids to try it out. So I teach them to paint, and to cook a different way for young hearts to feel beauty in simple things. Mornings, the living room fills with the soft scratch of brushes and bright laughter. I show them how to mix color by watching the light outside, how to bake cookies scented with orange and cinnamon. Every time a child bursts out laughing because they shaped a little heart from dough, I feel something inside me loosen, as if all the old hurts are rinsed away by a clean kind of joy. My front door is no longer the line between fear and love. It's a place people come and go freely, where an old woman teaches the neighborhood. Kids that love doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to be real. Caleb has changed a lot too. He was promoted to shop manager after finishing the company's advanced skills program. The day he got the news, he called me, voice full of emotion. "Mom, I did it." I smiled and answered softly, "Not just today, Caleb. You only just realized it." In the evenings he comes home early and eats with the kids. The way he talks, listens, and patiently explains to each of them moves me. Maybe when a man learns to be honest with himself, he also learns to love with a truer heart. Mason made the school honor roll. The boy who once rebelled and shut down is now a model big brother, even tutoring Oliver in math every night. Tessa made the middle school volleyball team. I've never seen her so confident as when she sent that first serve over the net, hair flying in the late afternoon Sunday. And Oliver, he makes me proud in his own way. One afternoon I heard piano notes drifting from the living room, awkward, halting, but full of feeling. I stepped out and saw Oliver on the bench, tiny hands moving over the keys of the old piano I once bought at a yard sale. He looked up and smiled. "Grandma, I named this song Our New Home." I couldn't say anything, just hugged him. That hug was both the answer and the greatest reward of my life. Nights at our house are always lively. Dinner might be simple chicken soup, toast, or a pot of chili, but at the table there's laughter, thank yous, and stories shared. Caleb strums the guitar, Mason taps a beat, and Tessa and Oliver sing. The music and laughter make our small house glow like a festival. Sometimes, I just sit and watch them, and I can almost see Daniel, my late husband, smiling from his photo on the wall. One June morning, I got an invitation from my old school. They wanted me back not to teach full-time, but to run a community art workshop for summer students. I read the letter, and the tears came on their own. After 35 years of teaching, I thought that journey had ended. Turns out, People who believe in the work never truly leave, they just pause, then return in a different way. I called the former principal, voice shaking. I thought I wasn't useful anymore. She laughed. Iris, people like you never run out of value. We need you, and the kids do too. I nodded, though she couldn't see. After all the storms, stepping back into a place that once felt like home, felt like walking into light after a long rain. One weekend afternoon while I was baking, news about Sierra arrived by mail. A worn postcard from Colorado. A short line read, "I'm working at a nursing home. Now I understand caring for others isn't a burden. It's a way to forgive yourself. Wishing you peace." I read it again and again, then folded it. No anger, no satisfaction, just a very quiet sigh. We all pay our own way, on the road we choose. I only hope she learns what took me a lifetime to grasp. Love isn't possession, it's illumination. That evening, we cooked the family's 32-spice chili Montgomery tradition. Daniel's recipe had a playful note. If you do it right, the neighbors will knock because of the smell. Caleb chopped the meat, Mason diced onions, Tessa stirred the pot, and Oliver measured the spices. As the spicy scent, I filled the kitchen. I laughed and said, "You know, this chili has every flavor, sweet, hot, bitter, salty, just like our lives. But together, it turns into something unforgettable." Everyone laughed. I saw firelight in their eyes, the glow of people who walked through darkness, and chose to stand up. After dinner, Mason came over with a sheet of paper. "Grandma, I want to read this." I nodded, and sat down my tea. He took a deep breath, and read aloud. My essay. My hero is Grandma Iris. She doesn't wear a cape, and has no magic. She has a gentle voice, work-worn hands, and the biggest heart in the world. She saved our family, not with strength, but with the truth. She taught me that sometimes love means daring to say enough. She's why I believe the good guys win in the end. When he finished, the room went quiet. I couldn't hold back my tears. Caleb put a hand on my shoulder, Tessa wiped my face with her sleeve, and Oliver whispered, "Grandma really is a superhero." I laughed through the tears. In that moment, I knew every pain, every fight, every loss had been worth it because it brought us here. To music, to laughter, to real love. That night, I wrote in my journal, "No miracle delivers us to happiness, only steady hearts and daily kindness." 6 months ago, this house was full of tears. Today, it's a symphony of joy. I once thought I was too old to begin again. Turns out, new beginnings don't have an age. As long as a heart can love, every beginning is beautiful. I closed the book, turned off the light, and watched moonlight spill across the lavender garden. The flower shadows swayed in the breeze reflecting on the glass. I smiled. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was truly living. On Sunday morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains, soft as a silk scarf. I was about to turn over, when I heard little whispers in the hall, then giggles. The door opened, and the 3 kids rushed in, Tessa with a tray, Mason with a glass of orange juice, Oliver struggling to balance a plate of heart-shaped pancakes. Surprise! Breakfast for Mama Iris. I burst out laughing. The way they called me Mama Iris tightened my chest with a warmth that almost hurt. I never asked for that name, but here it was. The gentlest gift of my life. Caleb came in last, holding a cream envelope. He set it on the tray, sat on the edge of the bed, eyes bright and a little emotional. "Open it," he said, voice a little rough. I opened it, and found legal guardianship papers naming me as the children's legal guardian, in any emergency. Caleb's signature was bold at the bottom. "I want, if someday I'm not here," he said slowly, "the kids will still be loved and protected, the way you've protected them." I couldn't hold back the tears. But this time they weren't sad. They were like the tears of someone who's walked through storms, and finally stands in the sundae. Tessa dabbed my cheek and teased, "If you keep crying the pancakes will get cold." I laughed through the tears. Mason chimed in. "I think the bed's about to collapse, Grandma." Caleb put on a mock serious voice. "Whoever breaks the bed, washes dishes for a week." We all burst out laughing. The sound rolled through the room, bounced off the walls, and blended with bird song at the window, the sound of life, of hearts that have been healed. I looked around. My old bed crowded with people. Breakfast a little cold. The pancakes a bit lopsided, orange juice slightly spilled, and I had never seen anything so perfect. I said, half joking, half true. You know, nobody does nothing. The one who keeps the roof peaceful is the one doing the most. The three kids looked at me, confused for a second, then grinned. That line felt like the final note to the symphony of these years. The old sneer. You don't do anything. Now blown away like a bitter joke in the wind. That afternoon, while the kids played outside, I sat at the table and opened the notebook that's followed me through this whole journey. I wrote the final lines. Respect doesn't need to be begged for. It's built from boundaries, honesty, and real love. I was once seen as someone who does nothing. But now I know the ones who quietly keep the light on are the ones holding the world together. I closed the book and breathed in the lavender from the porch. Caleb walked by and squinted at me. Journaling again, Mom? I smiled. Yes. So when I forget why I live, I'll have a place to read it back. Near dusk, we all gathered in the yard to take a new family photo, the first in years. The kids insisted on handling the tripod, set the angle, and cracked up, while I tried to balance with the neighbor's cat weaving around my feet. When the timer ticked down, Caleb wrapped an arm around my shoulders. The kids crowded in, and the shutter clicked. I saw myself smiling in that picture. A true smile. Not forced, not hidden. We printed it that very night, and set it in a wooden frame next to the old photo of me and Daniel. I looked at the two photos, two different worlds, two eras of a life, and whispered to my late husband. I did it, Daniel. I finally kept our home. Outside, the wind moved through the lavender, the scent spreading light as the breath of peace. If you've stayed with me to the end, thank you for being here through the whole story. My journey from a woman dismissed as doing nothing to a mother, grandmother, and teacher who found her purpose again may be a touch to corner of your heart too. I want to ask you, where are you watching from in this big world? Are you also keeping a roof over someone's head, small as it may be, but full of love? Thanks for watching. Take care, good luck.